Number 10. Thomas Gibson. Thomas made a name for himself starring as one of the leads of the series Criminal Minds. He was on the show for a few years, and in that time he made a few problems for those unfortunate enough to be staff members of the series. There were some issues over the years that would have warranted some actions, like screaming at producers and writers for not doing a good job, but the incident that got him kicked off the show for good involved, well, a kick. In 2016, Thomas was swiftly fired from the series after an incident with a writer named Virgil Williams. An internal investigation revealed that Thomas kicked Virgil one day during production of an episode that Gibson was directing. As I said, this was not the first incident on set that really should have resulted in some kind of a punishment though. In 2013, he pleaded no contest to No Juice related reckless driving after being arrested on suspicion of a DUI, and 3 years before that, he allegedly shoved an assistant director named Ian Wolfe during a late-night location scene. That led to the studio ordering Gibson to take 8 hours of anger management. According to most people on set, Thomas was a wild card. Some days he'd be friendly and accommodating, and then the next day he was ballistic. Number 9. Joaquin Phoenix. We understand a dedication to one's craft, and Joaquin is just a prime example. Joaquin's acting career has been going steady since he first appeared in the 1989 comedy Parenthood when he was in his mid-teens. While he's seen as one of the greatest actors in recent history, his reputation on set was tarnished thanks to a little freak out while filming the 2018 solo flick Joker. He appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live to promote the film when Jimmy played a behind-the-scenes clip of Joaquin getting loud and angry at a man named Larry, and the constant whispering behind the cameras before dropping an F-bomb and storming off the set. When the cameras came back to the studio, Joaquin was just frozen in shock. He was clearly not expecting that clip to ever see the light of day. He explained that Larry was a cinematographer who was teasing Joaquin off set earlier in the day, calling him a diva and referring to him as Cher. In fact, during his on-set outburst, you can hear him say, "Calling me Cher, how is that an insult?" He then explained that there's a lot of pressure on set, especially in a closed space like the apartment from the scene, and he apologized to the audience for having to see him behave in such a manner, which was met with applause. At the end of the day, he's a performer, and no harm came from this outburst, so if Larry's cool with it, we're cool with it. Number 8. Bill Murray Lake Toss. Bill Murray's going to be on this list more than once, and for good reasons. For this entry, we're talking about the film What About Bob and its extremely toxic set while filming. Bill Murray was really getting on his co-star's nerves, Richard Dreyfuss from Jaws, literally berating and bullying this man between takes to get the best performance out of him. In the years since, he claimed that Richard encouraged him to do this, but Richard claims that that never happened and is a complete lie. Considering the incident that this entry is actually about though, he got off pretty easy. On the same set, Bill got into an altercation with producer Laura Ziskin, a woman who is so respected that she has an achievement award named after her. This woman was subject to Bill's diva behavior, and one day during a disagreement, Bill Murray picked her up and just tossed her into a lake. When describing the event, she claims that it was playful, but according to everyone else on the set, it was just the wrong word to use. Number 7. Jenna Ortega. Jenna participated in one of the most popular streaming shows of this year on Netflix, playing Wednesday Addams in Wednesday. The series really helped launch Jenna's already growing career, and of course the series was picked up for a second season. However, it seems that Jenna may end up writing that entire season herself, because the writers of season 1 just didn't do a great job according to her. A while back, and before the writer's strike, Jenna made comments about having to put her foot down on the set of Wednesday. According to her, the writing was just odd, and honestly, Jenna made so many good points. She felt that the things that Wednesday was doing made no sense. She was involved in a love triangle that was just weird and honestly distracted from all the good parts of the show, and some of the lines that she was supposed to say were cut after she expressed concerns. There was a line of dialogue that saw Wednesday say the words, "Oh my god, I love it. Ugh, I can't believe I just said that." To which Jenna said, "No. Wednesday is not some valley girl with an emo side. She chops the heads off siblings if they let her." She claims that a ton of writers will agree that she is difficult and unprofessional at times because that was the only way to make her character work. She'd literally changed the dialogue during a take, and then the writers were just constantly confused. Ortega has claimed to be very protective of her character and has every intention to make season 2 better in every way, dropping any love stories surrounding Wednesday and instead opting to dive in deep on the dark and macabre that Tim Burton is really known for. The writers released sarcastic statements claiming that Jenna should really just write the next season herself since she's so good at it. Okay, let her do it, it's probably gonna be great. Number 6, Justin Bieber. In 2015, Justin was performing on the Today Show, debuting his new song, What Do You Mean? During his performance, he got super excited and started dancing while singing, one normally would. But moments later, he was caught on air dissing the camera operator, saying that he might as well not dance since the cameras don't even move. He said next time he won't dance, it seems like a waste of effort. He was visibly annoyed as he ended his time on the show. Fans of Justin were very quick to question his aggression in the moment. Before he was cut off by a commercial break, Justin starts to rant about what he even does this for, and if they're just gonna, and then he was cut off. Not long after this on-air mishap, Justin actually announced that he was gonna take a little break from music. The two seemed to be unrelated, but hey man, you never know. Maybe he had some real regrets when it comes to scolding a camera person that did nothing to you before that. But come on, out of all the mistreatment scandals surrounding Justin Bieber, this one's the silliest. When Justin appeared on the set of CSI, he actually upset an entire crew with his behavior. According to several eyewitness accounts, Justin locked a producer in a closet out of frustration and put his fist through a cake that was on the craft service table. Justin dismissed these claims as baseless rumors, but like a lot of people saw him doing that, so I don't know, you be the judge. Number 5, Barbara Corcoran. Shark Tank, what a wonderful program. Seeing some up-and-coming entrepreneurs get their start thanks to the endorsement and partnership of the Sharks. One of the Sharks, Barbara Corcoran, was blasted online after a resurfaced clip showed her saying how much she loved to fire people. Firing someone is a difficult conversation, doesn't usually end well for both people involved. However, for Barbara, it's her favorite thing in the entire world. These comments resurfaced as there is a labor shortage across the US, so that didn't help. In an interview on the Diary of a CEO podcast, she revealed that she loves firing people, especially on Fridays. What she loves to do is pop by someone's desk on Wednesday, book an appointment for Friday. Instead of giving them a proper reason for firing though, she'll actually just tell them that, she's not really sure why, they just don't really fit with the company. I don't know what makes this woman think it is a fun thing to be fired, but nonetheless, people are fuming. Many fans simply wonder if she owns a Dalmatian coat. More than likely. Number 4, Christina Aguilera. There have been a few instances of Christina being a menace to her staff or just people that she's worked with in the past. Today we're going to focus on her time as a judge on The Voice. According to several sources close to the show, she was a nightmare to work with. Apparently she always shows up late and just doesn't seem to care or apologize for holding up filming of the show. To make things worse, she is constantly arguing with Adam Levine. As early as 2012, insiders told production on The Voice that they much preferred Adam Levine to Christina. Apparently the makeup crew of the show acts as a NASCAR pit team. Every time herself and Adam get heated, whether it's on or off camera, she's directed to the makeup team to cool off. They then apply product to her face like she's Ricky Bobby in the middle of a race. According to producers, she made outrageous demands, including the introduction of a foot massager to the staff. Someone's only job on set was to massage Christina's feet every 30 minutes. No thank you. Number 3, Bill Murray and Harold Ramis. Now, it may come as a shock to you that 2 of the 4 members of the legendary Ghostbusters just kinda despised each other, but it turns out that this is very much the case. While filming Bill's more popular film Groundhog Day, it turns out that the star was in a rough place. According to the crew, he tormented Harold, the director of the project, constantly, showing up late, being consistently unavailable, and just being overall really mean. Apparently the main cause for concern was just Bill's overall feelings about the movie. He took issue with the way it was filmed, some of the dialogue he had to say, and just seemed to disagree with Harold about everything. Despite their collaborations before this on movies like Ghostbusters and Caddyshack, they just did not see eye to eye on anything. Bill wanted this movie to be more serious and philosophical, but Harold had to constantly remind him it was a comedy. At the end of the day, the constant arguments made a terrible time on set. Number 2, Katherine Heigl. Kathy was riding high back in 2007. The former Grey's Anatomy star not only won an Emmy for Best Supporting Actress in a Drama Series, but she also began transitioning to the big screen with the success of her first feature film, Knocked Up, alongside comedy legend Seth Rogen. Now, unfortunately, her rise to the top quickly became a free fall into an active volcano. following an ill-fated Vanity Fair interview the following January. In the interview, Catherine made a move that still has people scratching their heads to this day. She openly bashed the film that made her famous, claiming that it painted women as shrew, humorless, and uptight, while also placing blame on Seth Rogen for writing the men as lovable, goofy, and fun. The film still sits at an impressive 89% on Rotten Tomatoes because, now while she might claim the project was problematic, the final product is just a fun love story filled with good jokes and performances and a good story. Seth felt betrayed by the comments as they never had a fight on set and it never seemed like she was uncomfortable at any point. These comments, combined with some negativity towards her Grey's Anatomy writers, caused her agents to drop her as a client, and her time in Hollywood quickly came to a screeching halt. And at number 1, Bill Murray and Lucy Liu. Sony's first foray into the world of Charlie's Angels was massively successful thanks to its stars, Cameron Diaz, Drew Barrymore, and of course Lucy Liu as the titular angels. This movie was filled with action, comedy, and one of the weirdest performances ever given by Crispin Glover. That dude needs help. One interesting addition to the cast, though, was the inclusion of Bill Murray as the main man behind the mic, Bosley. Now apparently the set was anything but a comedy though after Bill found out a scene was rewritten while he was away. In an interview with the news outlet Deadline, Lucy Liu spoke up about her time on set and Bill Murray's outburst. Apparently Bill was away for a family event when a scene needed to be refilmed, and instead of using a stand-in, they just decided that it could go on without Murray's character being involved. So the scene was filmed and that was that. When he returned to find that the changes were made while he was gone, he was furious. He reportedly shouted at half of the crew, including Lucy herself. At the time, she wasn't sure why he was aiming his comments at her. She didn't write the scene, she wasn't the director, and she asked Bill if he was talking to her, and apparently that sent him into a meltdown. She decided to speak out on Bill's behavior, and he was ultimately written out of the sequel. Lucy's pretty proud for speaking her mind despite being a relatively unknown actor at the time, and so far it looks like Bill's career has suffered from it, because Lucy was just the first of many celebrities to comment on his behavior, but we could do a whole top 10 list about Bill Murray. Number 10. The Secret Son. While many know of the existence of Jaden and Willow Smith, did you know that they have a third son named Trey? Trey Smith was the product of Will's previous marriage to Cherie Zampino, and he tends to fly under the radar in the eye of the media. In 2018, Jada brought Zampino on her show and spilled the tea on the real story behind Trey, their relationship to each other, and Will's role as his biological father. For many Smith fans, this was the first time that they'd actually heard about Trey. Will recounts struggling to maintain a healthy enough relationship with Zampino for him to play the role of Trey's father figure. Trey was raised by his mom alone, growing up feeling betrayed and abandoned by Will. Eventually, Will made amends and became a proper part of his life, but for a long time he was kept hidden from public, surely leaving a stain on the family unit that will never be washed away. Number 9. Dwayne Martin. Making its way in the news cycle this week is of course the news that Will and his wife Jada are planning to sue Will's former assistant brother Bilal for making claims that he caught Will Smith and his friend Dwayne Martin getting busy behind closed doors a long time ago. Smith was married to Jada at the time of this so-called interaction, but he did not disclose those details until about a week or so ago. While doing an interview with Tasha K, Bilal told her that he opened the door to Dwayne's dressing room after not being able to find Will anywhere despite his car being parked outside of their studio, and when he opened the door he saw Will bent over a couch and Dwayne was behind him. A representative for Will Smith said that this story is completely false and fabricated for clicks and views. The legal action is a swift move and one made based on a fair point. One thing to have an opinion on someone, but it's a whole different thing when you call their orientation into question. So far there is no new news on how Dwayne feels about this. The only news that we do have is that the suit has been confirmed and actions are being taken. The Smiths have been in the news for lots of things this year, and honestly, there's not a lot more I can say about the whole Dwayne and Will situation, so let's just chat about some general revelations of Will Smith's secrets from the past, shall we? Number 8. He likes to get busy to relax. While the Smiths have famously entangled with other celebrities through their marriage, Will once again shared a bit too much information in his new book, Will. At one point, he made a not-so-shocking confession. When he was younger, Will was dating a woman named Melanie, who he discovered was cheating on him while he was away for work. Smith was deeply attached to his former girlfriend and to women in general. In his book, Will writes that he will always need a woman to achieve for. Prior to Melanie, Will had only been with one other woman, physically speaking. But following the breakup, Will claims to have gone full hyena mode over the next few months, making love to anyone who consented. At first using this as a way to relax and feel better about the relationship, this eventually grew into a full-fledged addiction to the point where Will claims to have suffered a psychosomatic reaction from the escapades, which causes him to occasionally vomit when he reaches completion. I didn't need to see that in my head, but since I have to, now you do. So, number 7, orientation. In 2012, Star Magazine published an expose on Will that somehow stuck around for a while. The outlet alleged that Will and his wife were heading for divorce because of his growing bromance with fellow actor Dwayne Martin, which was speculated on due to the multiple outings the pair shared in a short span of time. The rumor was only intensified when Jada expressed her dislike for their friendship, saying that she felt like Will flaunts it in her face. He takes Dwayne out all day and on exotic vacations, while she is just sitting at home alone in her university-sized house. While it's never actually been confirmed, the fact that a lot of people have accused Will of basically the same thing makes a lot of people wonder if this whole Dwayne Martin thing might actually have some merit to it. Number 6, the 7-year separation. Cheating rumors and dating scandals have followed this couple through their entire relationship. Since day one, everyone was convinced that they were in an open relationship or that they were cheating on each other on and off. But it turns out all those rumors were 100% true. Ahead of the release of her new book, Worthy, Jada sat down with People magazine to share some inside information, and the most revealing was that herself and Will Smith have actually been separated for like 7 years, despite appearing to be happy on the outside. The truth was they decided to go their separate ways, emotionally speaking, quite some time ago. Since 2016, Jada and Will have been living in the same house and appearing on red carpets together, but behind the scenes, they actually just don't do things together. Considering the massive size of Will's house, it's easy to imagine that Jada just chose her own section and decorated it to her liking. She continued to say that she felt pressured into being with Will because it was mainly his idea to get together in the first place. 2 kids and 1 marriage later, and it seems like Jada has finally come to her senses, and hopefully they'll split up sometime soon because they're not a good couple. Number 5, Will Smith almost ended his father's life. The Smiths are famous for getting into way too much detail when it comes to their family history. Will Smith released a memoir called Will in 2021 that was chock full of juicy information that most certainly should have remained a secret. One of the most shocking revelations in the book would have resulted in Will spending his life in prison had he followed through with his plan. The actor explained that his father, Will Smith Sr., got physical towards himself and his mother constantly. As a child, he vowed to seek revenge for his mother and himself when he was older and capable of more. Eventually, his father was diagnosed with cancer, and Will was forced to take care of him while he was bedridden. Will saw this as the perfect opportunity to take Papa down. He wrote, "One night, as I delicately wheeled him from his bed towards the bathroom, a darkness arose within me." He then went on to describe the moment that he contemplated pushing that man down the stairs, and noted that no one would have suspected him at the moment, and it was just perfect. He wrote, "I'm one of the best actors in the world. My 911 call would have been an Academy Award level." Will ultimately decided not to end his father's life and instead took care of that man until he passed away in 2016. Number 4, Oscars confusion. Now that all the information that's been leaked into the world about Jada, herself, Will, all this stuff, there is still one major question that a lot of people have on their minds. If Will and Jada haven't been together for 7 years, why did he feel like it was necessary to defend her and strike Chris Rock at the Oscars in 2022? A lot of fans flooded social media with questions and concerns surrounding the incident. If you don't remember, Chris Rock made fun of Jada being bald, Will took him out for it, and the story. If he had been attending Chris Rock's stand-up special, who knows what would have happened. It's so good, but we'll talk about that in another list. Despite Will claiming that playing the role of King Richard had left him in an odd mental state, it really was no excuse for the way he acted, especially if he hadn't been involved with Jada romantically in years. The main point being made by some is that despite Will and Jada separating, they have remained close friends, and in that instance he was just defending his good friend, but it's still no excuse for making Marty the zebra cry. Man, Madagascar is a great movie. Will has claimed that he tried to reach out to Chris following the Oscars, but he was told that Chris just was not ready to talk, and so far it seems like neither of them have actually spoken to each other. It's either that or that Chris Rock was ready, but he knew he would fly off the handle the moment he heard Will Smith's voice. Number 3, dating Chris Rock. Ahead of the release of her new book, Worthy, Jada Pinkett Smith revealed a ton of information that were once thought to just be rumors. Now, while I've already talked about the fact that they were separated for a while, another fun piece of information that was revealed was that she actually was once involved with Chris Rock. Now, I don't know if fun's the right word to use, maybe unique. Anyway, it's been revealed that before Chris Rock was slapped across the face by Will Smith live at the Oscars, he actually had asked Jada Pinkett Smith out on a date. Now, when you hear that, you must be thinking, oh, hey, it was probably before they ever met. No, the situation actually took place in 2016 at the height of the first round of separation rumors, which it turned out were true. At the time, Chris either had some inside info or he must believe everything he reads online, because according to Jada, Chris reached out to take his shot. He called and said, hey, he'd love to take her out on a date, and she was like, why? He clarified and told Jada that he was under the impression that herself and Will were getting a divorce for real, and when she revealed that that wasn't actually the case, Chris was just embarrassed and apologizing profusely. Though they eventually moved past that moment, it might explain why Will Smith was so aggressive with Chris at the Oscars. There's no way that he was unaware of what happened. Speaking of Chris and Will, number 2, Chris and Will were friends. Before the infamous 2022 Oscars thing, Chris Rock and Will Smith were actually on pretty good speaking terms. They weren't like best friends by any means, but they certainly weren't mortal enemies prepared to strike each other down at the mention of one of their wives. They first met on the set of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air back in its heyday, with Rock playing 2 characters, an actor named Maurice Perry and his sister Jasmine. They bumped into each other over the years, but Chris eventually starred alongside Jada in Madagascar, which I will never stop talking about. It's fantastic. I didn't know that growing up that Jada was in that movie because I don't read the credits. I'm too cool. Between Madagascar and the Oscars in 2022, things were fairly neutral and there was no bad juju between these people. But then suddenly, at the behest of his wife Jada, Will felt that it was necessary to stand up and defend her name with physical violence. And at number 1, Jaden and Willow. Rumors have been flying around for years that Willow and Jaden basically raised themselves. Their upbringing was nothing to scoff at. Jaden was on track to being an actor after being in the 2008 remake of The Karate Kid, alongside martial arts and opera legend Jackie Chan, but later shifted his focus to more entrepreneurial things, developing his own fashion brand, which has garnered him a ton of success. His sister Willow opted to stick with her creative roots, however, and has made quite the name for herself in the hip-hop genre. Now, unfortunately, their behavior comes from a place of neglect. During an episode of Red Table Talk, Jaden confronted his parents, calling out their terrible parenting skills. With both being so busy in their careers, they were never home to care for their youngsters. In fact, Jada and Willow recount spending most of their childhood with various nannies and teachers, only seeing their parents between projects or if they were working with them, like when Jaden and Will were in the pursuit of happiness together. It turns out that they were well aware of the whole separation thing from the very beginning. Will and Jada must have just been waiting until the kids were financially independent and out of their house to finally call it quits, something they probably should have done a lot sooner.
Starting off at number 10, we have Christian Bale. Christian Bale is not an easy person to work with, so obviously he would be an absolute pain in the to work for. And after a leaked voice recording showed Bale screaming at his cast on a film, people finally understood how bonkers that he actually is. And his assistant Harrison Chung had such a bad experience working for him that he ended up writing a book about it. The assistant said that Bale would lecture fangirls about bothering him to the point where they started sobbing. And then another time when he received a fan letter, he told Chung the fan should be eliminated with a screwdriver thrust through the eyeball into the brain, which prevents any screaming. That was a quote, by the way, that's literally what he said. And apparently he didn't seem like he was joking either. And his stint working for the actor was so bad, he underwent 5 years of therapy for PTSD to get past the trauma that he put him through. And after hearing this, it makes a lot more sense that he regularly plays like, dark and twisted people. Might not be acting all that much. In at number 9, Kim Kardashian. After Kim fired her longtime assistant Stephanie Shepard, Stephanie spilled the tea on what we all want to know about working for Kim. At the time, she wrote on Instagram, "Letting go of a bad friend and self-care involves forgiving yourself for your impossible standards and knowing you are worth it." So yikes, clearly she is, talking about a certain somebody. One thing that Stephanie revealed is that Kim apparently takes 1,000 selfies a day. But also, who really is shocked? She also said she is so vain that she has a staff remove plants or objects if they're in the way of a mirror. While on holiday at Punta Mita in Mexico, Kim took 6,000 selfies on her 4-day trip. Kim is also apparently a slob. She would leave clothes everywhere and Stephanie would have to clean them up. Stephanie also said there would be old food in the refrigerator, the trash would be overflowing in the kitchen, and the bathrooms, no one would go in there. On the one hand, that's pretty gross, but Kim is a busy woman, so I can see why she would be kinda messy. Like, that's definitely not the worst thing that she's done. In at number 8, Anna Wintour. After the movie The Devil Wears Prada, Anna Wintour is probably the first person that comes to mind when talking about people who treat their assistants terribly. And Wintour was exposed by her old assistant at Vogue, Lauren Weisberger. And her time there was so bad, she made a tell-all book about it, which was then turned into the movie that we all know and love, The Devil Wears Prada. The book and the movie portrayed the editor-in-chief as pretty much being the worst kind of boss, emotionally abusive, judgmental, and demanding. Anna actually wasn't too upset about the book or the movie, with her even saying in one interview that she's okay with anything that makes the fashion industry more entertaining and glamorous, basically meaning that she was behind the film. And even though the movie portrays her as having ridiculous demands, it also portrays her as a successful and powerful woman who knows how to get what she wants. And I'm sure Anna Wintour didn't have any problems with that depiction of her. In at number 7, Jessica Simpson. Jessica is another celebrity that's a total nightmare to work for. And over the years, she's gone through tons of personal assistants, which is never a good sign. And most of the assistants hated working for her. So after they quit, they spilled the tea on how terrible she is. One source told the Star that Jessica Simpson would dine and dash, as in she wouldn't pay the bill when she went to a restaurant. With one assistant adding that Jessica thought her stardom was payment enough. And even nastier, apparently Jessica wears a lot of hair extensions, but when she's done using them, she literally just drops them all over the place, with the assistant saying it literally looks like an animal is on the floor. And that one's pretty gross. Does she reuse those? Hopefully not. And at number 6, Courtney Love. Courtney Love is no stranger to controversy, which is clear from the scandal she has gotten into surrounding her late boyfriend, Kurt Cobain. And when it comes to assistants, she is just as bad. One of her old assistants actually sued her in 2012 for not paying her. And the payment that she was supposed to make was really weird, with her getting paid $30 an hour and a full scholarship to Yale. Apparently, she was also not only an assistant, but also a forensic research aide, with her even having the opportunity to work on the Nirvana biopic. But the assistant claims that not only did Courtney not pay her, she also made her work overtime, didn't pay her or the scholarship, and even asked her to do illegal tasks like hiring a computer hacker and posing as a lawyer. Another bombshell was when the assistant said that Courtney Love acted with an improper and evil motive amounting to malice or despicable conduct. Not too sure what that's referring to, but it doesn't sound good. Halfway at number 5, Angelina Jolie. Honestly, having Angelina Jolie on this list is not a shocker, because she seems like someone who would have some pretty strange demands. One assistant of Angelina's named Anna worked at their country estate in the south of France between 2008 and 2010. And apparently she saw Angelina and Brad fight all the time, and they would spend weeks living apart from each other. She also even said that she thought that Angelina was an alcoholic, with the assistant even claiming that when Angelina got too drunk, she would lock her 6 kids into one room. Anna even sued Angelina and Brad for $88,000 for wrongful termination after she took time off for an illness. Not great, Angelina and Brad. And at number 4, Lady Gaga. A few former assistants have spoken out against their terrible time working for Lady Gaga, with one of her assistants, Jennifer O'Neill, claiming that she was an actual monster. And apparently Gaga owed her roughly $400,000 in unpaid overtime during the 13 months that she worked for her. Apparently Jennifer would do literally everything for Gaga and was on call 24 hours a day. The lawsuit states that her duties included ordering Gaga's meals, making sure her outfits were on hand, the promptness of a towel following a shower, and serving as a personal alarm clock. The assistant Gaga had before that also had a terrible experience, with the assistant claiming that Gaga slept and took showers with her because she didn't like being alone. Honestly, that's what would be the nightmare for me. Not the long hours, but the fact that I have to sleep and shower with my boss. I just need my personal space. Too much for that. And at number 3, Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins' personal assistant had a darker experience with him, and based on his public persona, it's something people would never expect. Kimberly Stokes, a former assistant, worked as Tony Robbins' live-in personal assistant, and even shared her thoughts in a BuzzFeed article about him. She recalls one time where he walked into her bathroom while she was showering and dropped his towel, exposing himself. This wasn't the only time Robbins made a pass at her either. To make matters worse, Stokes was a survivor of abuse as a child, and Robbins knew that. Another former assistant named Kate said she considered seeing Robbins naked as a part of her job, but also saw his teachings as life transforming. And the fact that multiple people have made accusations against him proves that this is really just like a bigger issue for him altogether. And at number 2, J-Lo. This one is not a shock at all to me, because I've covered tons of times how J-Lo is one of the meanest people ever. Her demands are also the most degrading, with her insisting that her employees don't talk to her or even look at her. One of the job descriptions for her assistant was actually obtained, and it read, must have thick skin, be graceful under pressure, resourceful in foreign countries. They must be on call 24/7, be able to change diapers, work on little sleep, and cook if the butler is away. And if you're J-Lo's personal assistant, you have to know when it's J-Lo's snack time. Even though she won't actually say when she's hungry, like you just are always expected to have food waiting and know when she wants to eat. And finally, number 1, Mariah Carey. Is anyone surprised that the biggest diva in the entire music industry is on this list? Because I am certainly not. The assistant named Liana was Mariah's assistant for 2 years, until she was wrongfully fired in 2017, which led her to sue Mariah. According to a lawsuit that she filed and a 32-page complaint, she was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for both Mariah and her former manager. It seems that Mariah's former manager, Stella Stoppler, was a huge part of the problem, and she subjected the assistant to tons of like using racial slurs when talking about her. But there were also completely disgusting things that happened there too. And allegedly Mariah's manager tackled her to the ground and then urinated on her. Liana's lawsuit alleges that Mariah knew about the abuse and was even present for a lot of it, but still allowed it to go on. After she complained, she was fired 1 month later. And this is just so insane and nasty, but also I really don't know why that assistant would want to stay working for someone that would do that to her, right? Like, instead of suing her for wrongful termination, she should probably sue her for like workplace harassment or something instead. Starting off at number 10, we have Lena Dunham. So obviously Lena Dunham was incredibly busy on the set of her show Girls, as she was the creator, writer, director, producer, and she's the star of the show. And I can understand that when you're frazzled like that, you might not be able to schedule breaks to eat. But as a solution to that problem, Lena Dunham makes her assistants feed her. Like, she'll be on set with way too much in her hands, so while she's like reading a script or something, her assistant will be holding the food that Dunham is eating. In one photo of this taking place, Lena is getting fed a quesadilla by her assistant. And for me, that is just so gross on so many levels. And handheld food is definitely a no-go from me, especially with Corona now. Like, the thought of literally eating food that someone was just touching is absolutely revolting. And at number 9, Paris Hilton. Of course, Paris Hilton just had to be on this list. And even though she befriended one of her old assistants, Kim Kardashian, it didn't stop her from low-key bossing Kim around and even talking smack about her in her confessionals on her reality TV show. But one thing that Kim exposed about Paris is that for some really high-end purses, the ladies would walk around with them totally empty so that they wouldn't ruin the bag at all. But of course, someone has to hold her stuff. And that person would be none other than her assistant. And of course, there are some rare photos showing all the stuff that the assistants are carrying around, while Paris usually has like a purse and a small dog to hold. And at number 8, Mike Myers. Mike Myers is someone who I've talked about before, and apparently his funny personality is not at all what he's like in real life. And he's incredibly rude to practically everyone. So obviously that attitude would translate over to how he treats his assistants. And he not only treats his own assistant badly, but he also is a complete pain in the ass to the PAs on the late night shows that he is on. One incident was when he was on Conan O'Brien's show, and he was seen bossing around the staff of that show, yelling at them to get him seltzer, Twizzlers, and creamer. Which is firstly just super entitled, but secondly, who even asked for like that combination of items? Like, who needs a seltzer and a creamer at the same time? And also the fact that he's bothering PAs who are incredibly busy even without Mike Myers harassing them makes the whole thing just even worse. And at number 7, Amber Heard. I didn't have Amber Heard in my last one, and a ton of you guys wanted to hear about her, so here it is. With the way that she treated her ex-husband Johnny Depp and her other past partners, it's a guarantee that she would be a nightmare to an assistant. And she is. Amber's former assistant Kate James exposed her in a legal deposition that was part of Johnny Depp's defamation lawsuit against her. According to the assistant, Amber would routinely, verbally, and mentally abuse her, usually while Amber was intoxicated with substances like MDMA, mushrooms, and wine, with Kate even saying that she would wake up on edge the morning after Amber's binges because it was common for her to get terrifying texts from Amber in the middle of the night while she was wasted, with Kate going on to say that her time working for Amber is a nightmare that she hopes she's one day able to recover from. And at number 6, Mel B. Apparently the former Spice Girl is a lot spicier than we ever would have thought, and her former assistant completely exposed her for being a shady person. Mel's former assistant was actually a former friend, which makes his treatment even more shocking. The former assistant, Gary Meditayan, filed a lawsuit against Mel after she apparently didn't pay him $200,000 while he worked as her hairstylist and personal assistant. And wow, that is a lot of money. Meditayan was also very close with Mel, but it was at the expense of his own personal life. And because he did literally everything for her, he had basically no life at all. And allegedly he couldn't see his friends or family. He also exposed some pretty dark stuff too, like how Mel at one point was drinking ridiculous amounts, and it caused her to be violent with her own kids. Gary said that at her lowest point, Mel would drink 3 bottles of wine a day and multiple tequila shots, which would make her delusional and paranoid. Halfway number 5, Christina Aguilera. Christina Aguilera definitely is not even close to the worst on this list, but her request might be the most uncomfortable. Apparently when Christina was married to her ex, Jordan Bratman, they were pretty adventurous in the bedroom, and they would role play a lot, with both of them dressing up in costumes. And I truly could not care less what you want to do with your spouse in your own bed, that is nobody's business. But it was the business of her assistant, who apparently was tasked with picking up all of the clothes and costumes off the floor. And I would definitely be using gloves or like a tong if I was forced to pick that up. Yikes, probably both. And at number 4, Khloe Kardashian. Khloe Kardashian had me really fooled. This whole time I thought she was the perfect housewife, with her house on keeping up, always being perfectly clean, and with her pantry being essentially a work of art. But apparently that's all a lie. Even the coveted Oreo jar. And her assistant is really the person that makes that all possible. One of her assistants told Radar Online that Khloe didn't lift a finger, and one of the main jobs of her assistant is making sure that the house is spotless at all times, so it looks perfect on camera, even down to having the perfect number of cookies in her cookie jar. And even though this really isn't that insane of a request, I'm mostly just shocked because I really thought Khloe did it all herself. But Khloe definitely did have her diva moments, and allegedly if the food wasn't displayed the way that she wanted, Khloe would dump it upside down and make them do it all over again. And if that's true, that's next level. And at number 3, Ryan Gosling. Based on the characters that he plays, it would be easy to assume that Ryan Gosling is the perfect guy. He's always playing the charming and handsome guy next door that sweeps you off your feet. But when he isn't acting, he's apparently super strange. And although there's no horror stories of his assistants getting treated horribly, there are some stories that will just make you think twice about what he does behind closed doors. One random fact is that he likes getting waxed. Like, he likes the feeling of getting waxed. And as a person who has waxed my eyebrows for my whole life, I can tell you that it hurts. So that is definitely very crazy. Also, one of Ryan Gosling's housekeepers famously claimed that he walks up the stairs on all 4s. Okay? And he also sleeps upside down in bed, allegedly, with his head actually at like the foot of the bed. So clearly, he might have some skeletons in his closet, because that's some weird stuff. Like, there's gotta be more. And at number 2, Selena Gomez. Selena is again another celebrity that really isn't that bad, but a former assistant exposed her for being quite the slob, which is a little hard for me to believe honestly because she always seems like so prim and proper, but I guess that is the Disney machine in action. But according to her assistant, she leaves her dishes lying around, and in the assistant's words, she quote, has a lack of respect for other places and can completely trash a hotel room in less than 24 hours. And the worst part for me is that she apparently leaves makeup stains all over her bed and sheets because she doesn't wash her makeup off. And like, how can you be a celebrity and not wash your face? Like, if the whole world is looking at you, that's even more of a reason to make sure you have a really good skincare routine, come on. Hopefully she's learned from then. She'll also leave food wrappers all over the place, she doesn't clean up spills, and she also leaves her undies lying around for her assistant to pick up. So she's either very, very busy or very messy. Maybe a bit of both. And in at number 1, Naomi Campbell. So I didn't know this before doing this video, but apparently Naomi Campbell is a nightmare on set. And there are tons of documented cases of her just being terrible. And that attitude also translated to her assistants, which she treated horribly. And the most famous incident of this terrible treatment was when she threw her phone at one of her assistants, Amanda Brack. And yikes, that is like on another level. Amanda spoke more about everything when she made an appearance on the Tyra Banks show, saying that Naomi attacked her at least 3 times, spat in her face, and even cut up her passport and threw it in a swimming pool. And like, why a person would ever do that is truly beyond me. Like, what? She also spilled the tea on the phone incident, saying that while Naomi was stressed about flights and luggage, she slammed the phone into her face. And Naomi's hairdresser intervened and basically saved Amanda. But that was not her only nightmare interaction with an assistant. Amy Castaldo also speaks of how she was subjected to horrible treatment, and she endured things like headbutting, biting, pulling her to the ground by her hair, and calling her degrading names. And apparently the phone throwing thing is something that she does like pretty often, and she's also hit a former housekeeper in the face with a phone too. And wow, this woman is an absolute nightmare. Starting off at number 10, we have Lance Armstrong. Lance was exposed by his assistant right around the time that he was being exposed for doping, right after he was stripped of 7 Tour de France titles. His assistant decided it was a good time to come clean about everything, and the assistant, Mike Anderson, told Outside Magazine that Lance came back from Europe with cash stuffed into his pants, with the cash being from sleazy races that he did under the table. Also, Lance would apparently do everything possible to not be tested by the World Anti-Doping Agency, and that's why he got away with it for so many years. And apparently while he was at Livestrong events, which were events to support other cancer survivors, he would allegedly talk badly about the event and say things like, quote, "I hate these effing things." Ugh. Lastly, the assistant said he also left his wife in a very, quote, abrupt and cruel fashion, which doesn't say very good things about a person. In at number 9, Whitney Houston. The late singer's assistant, Robin Crawford, exposed Whitney's private life when she told the truth about her and Whitney's relationship. This was all done in the assistant's tell-all book when Crawford exposed that her and Whitney had a romantic relationship. According to the assistant, Whitney was a lesbian and everyone knew it. But again, this is just what the assistant said, not what we're saying is true. Whitney's mother, Chrissy Houston, was against their relationship, saying it was unnatural for 2 women to be that close. Even Whitney's husband at the time, Bobby Brown, did not like Robin Crawford, maybe because he felt that something more was going on. Crawford also said she was the first person to tell Whitney's mom about her drug use that ended up taking Whitney's life. In at number 8, David Hasselhoff. David Hasselhoff was well known back in the day as a classic heartthrob, known for his roles on The Young and the Restless and Baywatch. And he was even so popular that, fun fact, he actually used to hold the record for the most watched man on television, which is crazy. I didn't even know that was a thing. But it seems that his days of being a ladies' man are not over, and I don't blame him at all for that. You know, do your thing, Hasselhoff. But the issue here for the assistant is that one of his old assistants exposed that he actually makes the assistant go up to the women he's pursuing and ask them out for Hasselhoff. This is in the form of the assistant giving the women one of Hasselhoff's business cards, and I don't know if that like would impress me. Like someone asking me out on behalf of someone. That could really go like 2 ways. I don't think I'd like it very much. I'd be like, what do you mean, ask me out yourself, Hasselhoff? I don't know. And at number 7, Ariana Grande. Ariana Grande is known for many things, and one of them is the fact that she's been called a diva by fellow celebrities. One of her diva-esque traits is that she likes to be carried around after a long day of walking. And since she's so small, it's probably not a very difficult task for the right assistant, but it's definitely a strange one. And this rumor got so big that Ariana had to address it, and she ended up confirming it to be true. This was in the form of an Instagram post, where the caption was, quote, "Jones carrying me off stage. Post-show ritual when my feet are broken." She also joked about it some more with James Corden in a bit they did where James carried her to a Starbucks while she was ordering her drink. Of course, it was a grande drink. And at number 6, Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart is a very busy and meticulous woman, so obviously she's quite a handful for any assistant, but she knows it and doesn't really care, with Martha admitting in a blog post that she keeps her assistant incredibly busy, with organizing in particular. One task that her assistant had was organizing all of Martha's cosmetics into labeled clear plastic tubs in her basement dressing room. Martha explained it in detail in the blog post, explaining the assistant removes items from the bins and recategorizes every item, reevaluating what is still usable and throwing out expired items. And obviously that entire system seems like a total pain in the ass, especially if Martha makes her do that for all the rooms in the house. But also if you're an assistant for Martha, I mean, you better expect a lot of housework. Like, that is one person, I would not be Martha Stewart's assistant because whatever I do would not be good enough. I swear, she can't even have it. I feel like she would have to be her own assistant. She's so, like, you know, meticulous about everything. Halfway number 5, Garth Brooks. Country singer Garth Brooks' former assistant, Lisa Sanderson, who worked for him for 20 years, not only exposed the star, but also sued him for close to $500,000, saying in the suit that he was, quote, paranoid, angry, deceitful, and a vindictive man who will turn against those closest to him on a dime. Yikes. So clearly, she's not very fond of him. Apparently, the assistant also claimed that she tried to get him a career in TV and movies, but his demands were so insane that it never actually happened. With one example citing how he would refuse to work with anyone because he didn't want to share the limelight with other stars. Even saying that he refused a role in the massive movie Twister because he didn't want to be, outshined by the tornado. Brooks' lawyers, of course, denied these claims, but with accusations as insane as that, I don't know how that could be made up. Like, how can someone make up that he was afraid of being outshined by a tornado? That's gotta be true, right? And at number 4, Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro actually might be one of the worst cases of treating an assistant terribly, as there's proof of it happening. The actor was actually sued for $12 million for gender discrimination by his former assistant, Graham Chase Robinson. The assistant claims that De Niro made abusive and sexist comments to her, and even would initiate unwanted physical contact. And this treatment was not just allegations, there was actual proof of it on a recorded phone call. In one call, De Niro berated her for not answering, and the audio is shocking. The lawsuit also claimed that one of the reasons she was paid so little was because she was a woman, with De Niro telling her that she could get pregnant using sperm from a married male coworker. She also claimed that he would meet her only by wearing bathrobe or pajamas, and then asked her to scratch his back. So much wrong with all of that. And at number 3, David Beckham. This one is a case of an assistant exposing their employer cheating. But in this one, Beckham was allegedly cheating with the assistant. Back in 2004, the assistant, Rebecca Luz, said in an interview that she had an affair with David Beckham. Allegedly, the affair began with flirting and texting and gradually developed into a bond. But after a while, the relationship was purely physical, which made her feel dirty and cheap. Beckham vehemently denied the claims, and clearly Victoria Beckham didn't believe the claims, or they were able to work it through, as the couple is still together and happily married. And at number 2, Sandra Bullock. Sandra Bullock's personal life is pretty private, so it's hard to know what kind of boss that she would be. But based on accounts from her past assistants, she can be a bit of a nightmare. One strange request is that her assistant must always make sure the curtains in her home are kept closed at all times. Sandra's also known to have a pretty bad temper when things don't go her way, and unfortunately she takes that out on the assistant. According to one witness, while they were standing in line for a coffee, she berated her assistant for being 5 minutes late. And obviously, you know, there's two sides to every story, but based on that, you know, brief description, seems like a bit of an overreaction, if I do say so myself. And at number 1, Taryn Manning. Taryn Manning is another person who was absolutely awful to her assistant, and it was so bad it had to be handled in court. The former assistant, Hillian Hartman, reported that the actor was physical with her multiple times, and Manning was later ordered to stay away from the assistant after the two had a vicious brawl at the Dream Hotel in New York that left her assistant covered in bruises. According to a lawsuit that was filed, Manning choked and punched her personal assistant and whipped her with a wet towel. She also sprayed Windex in her eyes and mouth. And of course, after doing something like that, you're gonna feel the wrath of the law, as you should. And Manning was charged with misdemeanor assault and choking. Yeah, very, very rightfully so. That is, like, what? I don't even know how a person could do that to another person, like, just, I don't understand celebrities.
At number 10, Mariah Carey. Mariah Carey isn't the nicest person ever. We already know this. She's had run-ins with the paparazzi, which have not gone over well. She's had some bad relationships with others. She's known for being something of a diva. The theme here is that Mariah doesn't really treat people with the respect that they deserve, and this is probably why she's been sued for this kind of thing before. There was a lawsuit from one of Mariah's former assistants that claimed that the singer peed on her, ridiculed her body, and called her some pretty rude rude names. Her former assistant said that she was hired by the singer to be on call 24/7 and assisted both Mariah and her manager. Though she was paid a salary of $250,000 a year, this wage couldn't cover up the torment that she sustained from Mariah. But her case wasn't the only one up against the singer at the time. While this case was being disputed, Mariah had just settled one with her former manager, which cited breach of contract, harassment, and unpaid wages. It seems like though she pays her people well, she doesn't treat them as well as she should. Many other employees have had similar horror stories, which just shows that maybe working for the Queen of Christmas isn't as holly jolly as you might think.
And at number 9, Christian Bale. Christian Bale is definitely the person I would want to work for the least, because he uses intimidation and threats of physical harm towards his assistants. One of his former assistants had such a bad experience working for the star, he actually wrote a whole book exposing him. The book's called Christian Bale: The Inside Story of the Darkest Batman. It was an inside look into the negative experiences the assistant witnessed while working for him. Apparently one time fans approached Bale for an autograph, but they ended up running away crying because of how mean he was. Another time Bale got fan mail sent to his home, and Bale told the assistant that the fan should be quote eliminated, adding quote, "A screwdriver thrust through the eyeball into the brain prevents any screaming. Let me know how it goes." Things were so bad the assistant was diagnosed with PTSD afterwards.
At number 8, Naomi Campbell. Supermodel Naomi Campbell has been in the fashion industry for over 30 years. Over this time, she's had her fair share of scandals and feuds which have painted Naomi as the industry's mean girl. She's known for having had violent outbursts, and Naomi has been accused of being violent on 11 occasions and has been convicted of harming others 4 times. Some of the reported violent incidents include the model physically harming her assistant, grabbing her by the throat and beating her with a phone, harming another assistant and allegedly holding her hostage, throwing her phone at a housekeeper, and other accounts of emotional and physical distress. Out of these incidents, the model has been sued on multiple occasions, and they all mostly just settled out of court, but she was required to take an anger management class on top of all of her payouts. There's been some things that have been covered up, but luckily these days Naomi doesn't seem to be harming others like she used to and has moved on from this dark time.
And at number 7, Kim Kardashian. Kim Kardashian was sued by 7 former staff members in May of this year. The employees claimed that they were not paid enough or given breaks while employed at her California home. The lawsuit claimed that the staff never received pay stubs and weren't paid on a regular basis. They also were not given any breaks for meals or rest, and they weren't paid for all the hours they worked, along with other issues regarding compensation. But Kim claimed this was not true and that she was not responsible for paying these employees. Apparently they worked for another company and were paid through this third party. Kim's spokesperson said, quote, "Kim is not party to the agreement made between the vendor and their workers. Therefore, she's not responsible for how the vendor manages their business."
At number 6, Marilyn Manson. This year, a lot of dark information came out about singer Marilyn Manson. Multiple women came forward recounting their awful experiences with Manson, saying that the singer had harmed them severely. Some celebrities were part of the group of people who spoke out against the singer, but on top of that, one of Marilyn's assistants has also spoken out against the singer and even filed a lawsuit against him for having endured so much while working for him. The singer's assistant claimed that he had tried to kiss her, touch her inappropriately, and even made her work 48 hours straight. It was also claimed that Manson lured his assistant into working for him with promises of quote, "artistic collaborations and creative opportunities." End quote. The assistant said that she lived in constant fear of one of his violent outbursts, and she said that she felt used, comparing herself to a piece of meat. To think that any of this happened to the people affected by Manson's actions is absolutely heartbreaking, and justice needs to be served.
Halfway number 5, Sharon Stone. Stone was sued by her former nanny after that nanny accused her of violating labor laws. The nanny also claimed that Stone made derogatory comments about her ethnicity. The nanny is of Filipino heritage and claims she was quote, "repeatedly subjected to numerous derogatory comments and slurs by Stone related to her Filipino ethnicity and heritage, mainly during her last 6 months of employment. These comments were allegedly relating to the nanny's accent. Apparently the nanny was told not to speak so Stone's kids would not develop an accent like hers. Stone denied the claims and said it was quote, "an absurd lawsuit with made up and fabricated claims filed by a disgruntled ex-employee who's obviously looking to get money any way she can." But only 1 year after this suit, Stone was sued by another employee, her then maid Angelica Castillo, for quote, "wrongful termination."
At number 4, Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga is one of the most famous singers out there, so you know that she makes a lot of money, but even with all of her riches, apparently apparently she wanted to keep a lot of it for herself and not pay her staff. Back in 2011, Gaga was sued by a former assistant who claimed that the singer had cheated her out of her overtime wages when she worked alongside the singer for 13 months from 2009 to February 2010. According to the assistant, they were supposed to earn a flat rate of $50,000 annually in the first year, and in the second year of working for the singer, that rate was bumped up to 75 grand. It's still a good paycheck, but the assistant claimed that she never got her bonus overtime pay despite the fact that she had to work and be on call 24/7. Though the case was supposed to go to trial in 2013, they ended up coming to a settlement agreement before they ever entered the courtroom.
And at number 3, Celine Dion. In 2012, Celine and her late husband were sued by their former handyman, Keith Sturdivant, for unpaid wages. This handyman worked at their Florida compound and performed duties like cleaning shutters, repairing appliances, and running errands. The lawsuit goes on to allege that Dion improperly and illegally designed Sturdivant as an exempt employee, which allowed them to avoid paying him overtime, which he is rightfully owed. Because of this, he is suing for unpaid back wages that he was entitled to during employment. At the time, he said others were also not paid what they were owed, so it wasn't clear if other people might be joining him in the suit. The suit was later settled for an undisclosed amount.
At number 2, Courtney Love. In 2012, Courtney Love got into some serious drama with one of her former assistants, and it got pretty ugly. Courtney's former assistant filed a lawsuit against the singer seeking wages, expenses, and punitive damages for quote, wrongful firing, wage and overtime violations, false promise, breach of contract, negligent and intentional misrepresentation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The assistant had nothing but negative reviews for having worked for Courtney, and she was prepared to tell the whole world about it as she was planning to publish an expose about her time with Courtney. In a copy of the book Proposal, this expose promised all kinds of inside knowledge about the celebrity, including details about how she is a quote, alleged hoarder, media manipulator, and drug user, end quote. Nothing ever came of this book, I don't think, and I'm not quite sure what happened with the rest of the case, but I for one would have loved to know what this assistant had to say because I have a feeling it would have been very juicy.
And finally at number 1, Charlie Sheen. Back in 2015, Charlie Sheen was sued for $1 million by a former staff member named Keith Fitzgerald. When Fitzgerald was originally hired in 2013, he was offered a 3-year contract with a salary of $300,000, medical benefits, and 20% incentive bonus as well. He was supposed to work for 3 years but was fired after only 5 months. Because of this inconsistency, the staff member sued for premature termination. Allegedly, Sheen didn't pay for any of his work either. The lawsuit said in part, quote, Fitzgerald's employment relationship was prematurely terminated after approximately 5 months without any explanation. Fitzgerald received no compensation whatsoever for any of the services he performed for Charlie Sheen at any time whatsoever. Sheen denied the claims and called the whole thing bogus, but the suit was later settled for an undisclosed amount.
Starting us off at number 10 is Jennifer Lopez. I never saw her as the bossy type, and for the most part she's always been praised for kindness throughout her career. But there is one story that has followed her throughout the years, and it's that she gave her new assistant a ridiculous amount of requirements. According to the HuffPost UK, she reportedly banned the staff working at her home from making eye contact with her. I personally think this is ridiculous, not to mention like humanly impossible. But Gawker also reported that she gave these requirements to her new assistant years back. Quote, the person has to be graceful under pressure, have thick skin, and be resourceful in foreign countries. You'll be on call 24/7. You have to change diapers, work on little sleep, and cook if the butler is away. You have to know when JLo has her snack time. She won't say she's hungry, and you're expected to have food waiting. So if these crazy claims are true, then basically she's looking for a mom, a cook, and a mind reader who functions on no sleep. Coming up next, number 9 is Mariah Carey. There have been a handful of diva moments reported throughout her singing career, but one of them came from one of her former assistants, Isler Oliver. The story surfaced back in 2014 after she filed a lawsuit against Mariah for her controlling behavior. Some of the details in the case were reported online, and people were shocked to hear some of the ridiculous requirements her assistant claimed she had to follow. She testified that Mariah made her work 16-hour days, 7 days a week, and said that she was not paid overtime for her hours or even her lunch breaks. She was Mariah's assistant for 7 years, but eventually quit in 2007 and decided to get some compensation for her treatment. Her lawyer released a statement saying, "My client put her family's life on hold while tending to Mariah Carey's family, and Mariah repaid paid her by underpaying her. They ended up settling the lawsuit, but it is still unclear what money she received from that. Moving on to number 8, we have Christian Bale. The actor had the same assistant for over a decade, so people would assume they had a good relationship if they stuck around for that long. His assistant name was Harrison Chung, who ended up writing a biography about his time working for Bale. He described some of the things he had to do for the actor and how he ended up having to see a therapist after. He wrote, "I would do anything from sniffing Christian's armpits for BO right before he hit the red carpet to making emergency sock runs if Christian was all out of clean ones." He spoke with the Daily Mail about his time as an assistant and said that his therapist described his condition as post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, I personally cannot imagine being a grown man having to go get another grown man a fresh pair of clean socks. And don't even get me started on the whole sniffing the armpits thing. That's disgusting. Although I'd probably sniff Miley Cyrus's armpits. Cruising into number 7 is Lady Gaga, another celebrity who had a lawsuit brought against them by their former assistant. Back in 2013, Lady Gaga's assistant, Jennifer O'Neill, filed a lawsuit for alleged unpaid overtime wages. In court documents that were released online, she said she was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. She also claimed that the two of them had to share a bed when Gaga was touring and that she was never given her own hotel room and privacy. And we all know that Gaga can't afford that. During their time working together, it appeared that they had a good relationship. But once the lawsuit came out, Gaga was caught saying some pretty harsh things about her once assistant. A screenshot showed her saying, "Jennifer is an effing hood rat who is suing me for money she didn't earn." Jennifer sued her for almost $400,000 in overtime pay plus further damages. They were set to go to trial, but then it was announced that the two of them came to a settlement, and then the lawsuit was dismissed. In spot number 6 is Naomi Campbell. Being an assistant to this supermodel would probably seem like a dream job for most people. But throughout her career, there have been incidents that would prove that it is not all glitz and glamour like we would probably think. One of the incidents is still famously known, and it goes back to 2001 when Naomi threw a phone at her assistant. The assistant claimed that she grabbed her by the arms and threw her down on a couch and threw a phone at her. At first, this story might seem like a little too crazy to be true, but this was not the first time violent claims have come out about the model. 1 year before this claim, Naomi actually pleaded guilty to a separate assault charge in relation to beating an assistant. Then, down the road in 2016, she faced more legal action after she allegedly assaulted a former public school boy. He had worked for a PR firm and was drafted onto her team, which clearly did not go too well. So there are multiple reasons why people should not apply to be her assistant anymore. Like, I wouldn't have even applied after I found out about the first thing. Halfway through at number 5 is Courtney Love. The singer had an assistant named Jessica Labrie who ended up suing her for her behavior and missed pay. Some of the claims released in the lawsuit were very shocking that it almost seems too crazy to be true. Like, you just never know if this stuff is made up or not. According to the Rolling Stone, Jessica claimed that Courtney, I quote, acted with an improper and evil motive amounting to malice or despicable conduct. She went on to say that she worked over 60 hours a week without overtime pay and even claimed that she was asked to hire a computer hacker. Reports say that she was forced to send a false legal correspondence at one point. Jessica also said that Courtney had promised to cover her Yale tuition if she signed on to work for her, but then she never paid it. In 2012, she filed for wrongful termination, non-payment, and breach of contract. Her lawsuit was asking for up to $400,000. It wasn't until 2014 that they reached a settlement and both parties filed a motion to dismiss the case. Rolling into spot number 4 is Lindsay Lohan. There was a point in her career when she was being titled the wild child of Hollywood. And during this time, Perez Hilton spilled a story about her and her personal assistant. Perez Hilton is the most famous celebrity news blogger in the world, but oftentimes his stories are up for debate, so we really don't know if this one is true. But according to him, Lindsay once kicked her personal assistant named Gavin Doyle out of a car right after he bailed her out of jail. After Perez spilled the beans, Gawker also added to this story and reported that Lindsay had actually tried to blame a car accident on him earlier that day. She had told the police that he had been driving the car when it crashed, but it was actually her and she was charged with a DUI. So he bailed her out of jail, and then that's what he gets in return. In the third spot is David Beckham. I know us ladies are very upset right now because we thought that he was one of the good guys. Turns out that claims of bad behavior were brought up against him by his former PR assistant Rebecca Luz. But their story is a little confusing because she had also claimed that she had an affair with David while she was taking care of his children. It was back in 2004 when she made headlines after she sold a kiss and tell story to the newspapers and claimed that her relationship with David had become intimate despite the fact that he was still married to Victoria Beckham. She revealed all these juicy details to a British journalist but claimed that she felt used by David and that the relationship made her feel dirty. Beckham denied all these claims, so we're still not sure who to believe on this iconic story, but no other reports have come out that he treated employees badly, so... Taking over the number 2 spot is Sarah Jessica Parker. She seems like a genuine and kind person, but for some reason she comes off as a complete psychopath when it comes to dealing with her staff members. But this is only because an anonymous former assistant came out with claims that Sarah had ridiculous demands when they were her assistant. These are some of the claims that came out. Apparently, she had really strict instructions on how everything in her house is used and presented. Her staff had to refill a 1.75 ounce container of Vaseline with a small spoon or knife for her children to use. The refill jars must not be too big, and the cutlery must be hand washed using a paper towel and then put in the dishwasher. Apparently, her staff members also had to check the levels of her house products daily and only order a new product once it was completely run out. Now, these claims are coming from someone anonymous, so they could be totally untrue. Plus, in 2014, she was a bridesmaid to one of her assistants. So is she really that demanding? I don't know. Earning the number 1 spot is Taryn Manning. This one is by far the worst story I've read about a celebrity and their personal assistant. The Orange is the New Black actress could have ended up behind bars for some of her violent behavior towards an old staff member. She was once facing charges of misdemeanor and assault after punching and choking her personal assistant, Holly Ann Hartman. According to Taryn's lawyer, the two of them had a late night argument that turned into a physical altercation. Apparently, the two of them had been working long hours when the actress attacked her assistant. But her assistant later decided that she would not pursue the case any further, and many people think it was because she too would be at fault since they were both throwing punches. But in the end, Taryn was court ordered to stay away from Holly Ann from that moment on.